Adelante.
Perdón. Should I start?
Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Good afternoon. Buenas tardes. Thank you for joining us from around the world, wherever you may be, and welcome to Youth Pulse Empowering Future Crime Prevention Innovators. My name is Christian, and I head up the UNODC office in Mexico, but perhaps more importantly at this venue, I'm the proud father of a teenager, and I'm equally proud to have been working with the young people that you're about to meet. In fact, just a little bit older than my daughter, and they're already an inspiration and role model, as it were. Last year, we gave the word to Paula Perez, as some of you might remember, as the only young person at a high-level panel on accelerating crime prevention, criminal justice, and rule of law in New York. And this year, we give the voice to two other agents of change who, representing a handful of classmates, a handful of fellow students, will present the good work that we've been doing in partnership with the Monterrey Institute of Technology and Higher Education. Now, needless to say, youth matters to the United Nations as a whole, and youth matters to the Office of the United Nations on Drugs and Crime, also here in Mexico. And the vision is crystal clear. We empower young people to achieve their full potential. To us at UNODC, this means listening and paying attention to young people. It means involving and engaging young people, making them part and parcel of policymaking and decision-making processes on equal terms. That is what UNODC's Youth Empowerment Accelerator, called YEA, is all about, if you want to know more. It also means not talking too much. So let me welcome and introduce our speakers today. First, we have Pietro Pagani. He's a student of international relations, specializing in peace, conflict, and security. And he also loves cinema and soccer. Gracias, Pietro. We look forward to hearing from you. Then we have Natalia Garcia, who is also a student of international relations, again, specializing in peace, conflict, and security from Tec de Monterrey. And she's very passionate about debate, as I'm sure she will see. In 2022, Natalia was crowned University Debate Champion in Spanish, the World University Debate Champion, in Spanish. Thank you, Natalia, for being here. Next, we have Daira Aguilar, who is the General Director at Global Thought, a think tank that promotes youth participation in disarmament, amongst many, many other worthy causes. Gracias, Daira, por estar aquí con nosotros. Then we have Saraí Garcia, who is the General Director at Juvenile Justice Advocates International Mexico, an organization that excels in putting youth first in a variety of issues. Thank you, Saraí, also for being here with us. Then we have Cecilia Roman, who's the Communications and Security Manager at Uber Mexico, a company that has supported us in the promotion of the Blue Heart campaign against human trafficking. Thank you, Cecilia, for being here with us. And finally, we have Ana Tesaracho O'Brien, Director of Public Affairs at Telefónica Movistar Mexico, an enterprise with whom we've been fortunate enough to work on the prevention of gender violence and child sexual abuse, amongst other things. Thank you, Anna, again for being here. And welcome to you all. We are indeed honored to have you here. Thank you for your commitment. Thank you for your time. Just a little bit more background to set the stage for our panelists and the hour and a half roughly that we have ahead of us. About a year ago, we established a partnership with Tec de Monterrey to provide a space, to provide a platform for 12 students, in this case, 8 young women and 4 young men, to work on innovative crime prevention ideas that we could turn that we in turn could turn into real projects and programs across Mexico, the region, and indeed beyond. We called it a mentorship program, but I'm no longer sure who we should be calling the mentor and the mentee, as you will see. Today, as I already indicated, we'll be hearing from Pietro and Natalia as the main presenters. But as I also said, they very much represent their fellow students, their fellow classmates at Tec de Monterrey, which I've had the opportunity to meet on several occasions. They will be making two presentations. The first is on preventing gender-based violence on gaming platforms, and the second one is on crime prevention from youth to youth, a field experience from Querétaro here in Mexico, if I'm not mistaken. The presentations, I trust, will speak for themselves. The numbers certainly do, and therefore I will very soon let these young people speak for themselves. Following these presentations, which will take about 10 minutes, we will follow up with some Q&A sessions from our civil society sector and private sector friends and allies. And then finally, I'll probably give the word to each participant to share some final thoughts. So with this, the idea is to get started. Pietro, are you ready?
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone.
Okay, that is good. Pietro, as I said, one of our commitments is not to speak too much, so I'll let it over to you. But I know that you're going to talk to us about the challenges that youth encounter on gaming platforms, particularly as they relate to gender-based violence. So please, take it away. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Christian. Okay, so last semester we had the opportunity on working on a project based on prevention of gender-based violence on gaming platforms in Mexico. And this project was elaborated by myself, Pietro Pagani, and Carol Ramirez, who unfortunately couldn't be with us. Okay, so before we start, I need to provide a bit of general context. In Mexico, there are 67.8 million people who play or regularly play video games, according to The Economist. And out of this number, 50.3% of the gamers identify themselves as women. This was provided by a research made by Omdia's Consumer Research in 2022. Now, out of the 67 million people who play, 81% play using a smartphone, which means they are considered a casual gamer. We wanted to focus primarily on the more intensive gamers, who are the 21% of this number who use a gaming console, and the 10% of gamers who use a gaming laptop. Now, in Mexico, there are no official statistics or information with regards to gender violence in online gaming. However, we can take examples from other countries like the United States, that according to an ADL report, 48% of women who are gamers in the USA have been harassed at least once. And according to this very same report, women are the most vulnerable groups in the gaming platforms. That is why, if we can go to the next page, please. That is why we decided to conduct a survey with semi-closed and open questions to test whether women perceive that there is gender violence in Mexico. The survey was primarily applied online, but we also applied it face-to-face, and we benefited a lot from word of mouth online. And finally, the response collection took place from the 19th of October until the 1st of November of 2023. And the objective was, as I mentioned, to determine whether or not women perceive that there is violence in online gaming, and we wanted to generate solutions based on the problems we would identify. Now, it is important to say we surveyed 145 gamers who met our criteria, and we included a possibility to provide testimonies, where we got 47 answers, which we believe is a considerable number, 1/3 of the respondents, which was very nice because it was an optional. It was optional. We did include a small insight of what gender-based violence is. And finally, most importantly, it was anonymous. Now, from the results, the women were primarily between 18 and 34 years old. Most were students, and the most common genre of gaming was shooters. 70% of the respondents played on laptops and 90% played on consoles, which confirms that we did reach our target audience because these are the more intensive gamers and the people who play the most in online platforms. Now, with regards to the results we received from the survey, we found out that the frequency of gender-based insults received by women, out of this, only 9% claim to have never received such an insult, whereas 91% at least once in their lifetime or in experience gaming have received at least one insult based on gender. Now, with regards to the frequency of messages that have been deemed inappropriate and have been received by women gamers on their personal social networks, we can see that at least 50% have never or almost never, never received such a comment. However, the important part is the 9% that indicate that always receive such comments, or the almost always, which is 13%, because we can see how the violence in gaming platforms can actually escalate into social media, and therefore could potentially escalate into real life, which becomes an even more dangerous situation to the people who are vulnerable. And finally, we have that we wanted to see how often women have difficulties to finish a game or a match due to toxic behavior from other gamers. And it's an overwhelming majority, 58%, reported that this occurs sometimes, which has led to many women, actually 3 out of 4 women, to admit that they use a male pseudonym or have used a male pseudonym at least once to hide their identity. Furthermore, 83% of the surveyed women consider that their identity can create difficulties due to negative attitudes towards them. Now, if we can go to the next page, please. Out of the 47 testimonies that we received, 37 women acknowledged that gender violence exists in the gaming world and shared personal experiences or even experiences from people they know. Only 2 women consider that the gaming platforms are safe spaces, whereas the rest of the women claim to avoid using such spaces in order to reduce the risk of encountering toxic behavior from other gamers. Now, I would like to share with you one of the testimonies. I have it here in my notes. And it says that my summoner name, for context, summoner name is the name they use in the game League of Legends to identify themselves. So this person wrote that my summoner name is neutral, so I do not usually face gender-based violence. But there is a lot of sexualization, and gamers often change their behavior towards me when I tell them that I am a woman. And this takes me to the problems we have identified. If we can go to the next page, please. We have identified 3 problems. The first one, which I have just mentioned, is that gamers change their attitude when they know they are playing with women, and they can discriminate them or assume they are worse at the game merely because they are women. The second problem we identified is that the harassment can spread to other areas like social media or even real life, and it can make the problem a lot more dangerous for people because it can even turn or convert itself into physical harassment, no longer cyber harassment. And finally, we noticed that there is an absence of involvement from the government, and therefore the problem is not as visible as we would like it to be. That is why we have 3 proposals to address the identified problems. The first one is to create workshops to create gender awareness, specifically with regards to gaming and gender violence in the gaming platforms. And these workshops would consist of gender sensitivity, inclusion, and provide an alliance within the community, specifically the youth. And the places where we would like to apply such workshops is primarily in municipalities, universities, and high schools. And I actually wanted to see what I can do locally in my community. I live in the state of Mexico, and in the state of Mexico, if you want to create a workshop with the government, you have to submit a written request describing the required activities. To the office, you have to describe the required activities, time schedules, and contact info. Furthermore, the request must be submitted to the offices of the Women's Affairs or la Secretaría de Mujeres del Estado de México, given that it is a gender-based subject. And you have to do so 15 business days prior to the date requested to hold the event. And this is a great way to elaborate such such ways to inform the people in a local in a local scene. And if many people do so, well, we can start seeing changes. However, if we want to reach broader audiences, we have to use social media, especially TikTok, which is very big, especially in the younger communities. And YouTube is also a very efficient way to further share these workshops. Now, with regards to the game developers, especially the future game developers, we want them to adopt gender perspective when developing games. This means, for example, they could use artificial intelligence to detect discrimination in real time. And there is actually one example of how this can work. It's called toxic moderation, and it's been used in Call of Duty with a it's a clear case of success. because it is a proactive voice moderation, and it can moderate any chat because there are simultaneously millions of people playing online. And we would also recommend for the publishers to implement tougher restrictions towards gamers with a history of violence. Let's say, for example, if a publisher has 5 games and the gamer is being violent in one of them, he should get a ban on all of them. So we can do this through social media, other ways of influencing developers, even sending letters. And finally, with regards to what the government should do, the youth should encourage the creation of laws that protect gamers from online harassment. And this can be achieved through lobbying, protesting, educating others, joining social movements, activism. There are many ways that we can influence the public policy makings in many countries. Like in Mexico, for example, the case study is the Ley Olimpia, or Olimpia law, which demonstrates how through activism and pressure, the governments can apply laws that are related to cyber harassment. We also have another case of success, which is in Argentina, where grooming is now a federal offense, which is another form of cyber harassment. So finally, we believe that if a law is not possible, we should at least promote research and data collection to make the problem more visible, particularly from the INEGI, which is the National Institute of Statistics and Geography. They conducted a survey or a report in 2022 that talked about cyber harassment. So why not also include the gaming aspect of cyber harassment into their research and the reports? I think that would be a very important thing to accomplish in order to make the situation a lot more visible, and also to inform women, or people who identify as women, that there exists gender violence, even if they're not aware of it. And that way we can prevent more people from suffering from it, even though they might not be, as I said, aware that they are suffering from it. So thank you very much. That would be my participation for now.
Thank you. It's over to me, right? Thank you very much, Pietro. Look, as a data-driven organization, your words very much echo with us, and it's funny that you should mention INEGI, something that I hope we might get back to a little bit later, because we also have a partnership like we have with you. We have one with INEGI precisely on statistics and research going back some 10, 13 years now. Just before I get on to one of our panelists, Daida, let me just invite you to perhaps pose thoughts or reflections, and maybe even a question in the chat, if that is possible, so that we might pick that up towards the end of this hour and a half. Daida, let me start with you. Having heard Pietro, what are sort of the main challenges that you, as Global Thought, and of course, Global Thought is a civil society organization, what are the main challenges that you consider young people they face when it comes to crime and violence?
Well, thank you so much, first of all, for the invitation, and congratulations, Pedro, for your presentation. It was very enlightening about the gender-based violence in the video game spectrum. And according to the question, the main challenges that Global Thought considered that young people are facing regarding crime and violence, and related not also with the Pietro presentation, but also with the work that we do in terms of security and peace and disarmament agenda, we consider the following points, that are 5. The first is that governments do not have enough local prevention strategies that integrate the youth needs and experience, particularly considering technology. And I think that it's important to point it out, because the investigation that Pietro showed us today is related to technology and youth and gender-based violence. But also, young people are living right now in one of the most polarized moments of the society, where governments are choosing to discriminate the participation of civil society that includes young people. So that's important to point it out. The second point that we consider as an organization is that young people, particularly young men, are the main victims of crime and violence in Latin America. That is one of the most insecure regions in the world. However, the gender perspective is not the main approach to understand the causes of this type of violence. Young people are not part of the construction of the public policy related to reduction on crime and violence, and this combination of factors is reflecting in the consequences that young people are living nowadays. The third point that we want to bring into the table is that young people are exposed to a variety of violent stimuli in social media, television, video games, and public policies as militarization. We like to point it out this because particularly young people are inserted in a society that significantly values physical violence as a form of power and warlike or militarized masculinity as a standard for all men. And this is related to a fourth point, that is that young women are exposed to more violent interactions with men in different spaces, particularly in cyberspace, but also are being motivated to exercise violence to be recognized in their social communities, despite the rise of feminist movements. And we consider that this is an important point that reflects the reality that we have nowadays. And finally, we identify that the rise of crime organizations that have more influence in society and have modified their recruitment methods to add young people into their organization. It's very important because nowadays young people are capable to do anything for achieve a way of living related to their hierarchy and prestige in their communities, and that could be related to exercise violence, not only in the territory in the traditional way, but also in the cyber territory when the video games could be found. So we identify these five challenges for young people. We know that there is no the best scenario for trying to change the world, but we hope that projects and efforts like Pietro is showing us today could help to have a better world in this sense regarding to crime and violence.
Thank you so much, Daira. I do not pretend to be able to summarize what you just said in any meaningful way, but it's quite clear that we will be leaving somebody behind if we continue as is, and that's leaving youth behind. That's why we have the new UN Youth Office. That's why we have a UN Youth Strategy. And that is also why UNODC today considers youth along the same lines as women empowerment, gender equality, and human rights as a cross-cutting issue. Maybe that's one way of putting it. Thank you to you both. We hurry on to Anna. Anna, are you with us? Anna, it's basically
yes.
Thank you. It's basically the same question from you, but now from, let's say, a private sector perspective, in this case, Telefónica Movistar. What do you consider the main challenges for young people facing crime and violence from your vantage point? Thank you.
Of course. Thank you very much, Christian, for the invitation, all of you. I'm thrilled to be here. So I'm just going to start because of the time. It's a fact that being a young person in Mexico, it's pretty difficult. And it gets worse when you are a young woman or a person from a vulnerable group. So there's a lot of violence when using the internet, not just only regarding content that everybody can watch, but from contact with other people. We think that grooming and cyberbullying and this kind of conducts are really hurting minors. Pietro was telling about about 70 million people in Mexico uses some mobile phone or tablet to be a gamer, and 22 million of those people are minors between 6 and 17 years old. So they are very vulnerable because of their state of development, emotional and mental development. They are vulnerable to these kind of conducts. At this point, we are not saying that gaming is one of the most useful things for these conducts. We're not saying that gaming is wrong. In fact, we promote gaming because we think that it develops social skills, soft skills. It promotes teenagers to go to STEM careers. So we really think that gaming is a very important part of youngsters at this era. But we have this consciousness of giving the info everybody needs to know the risks that are in this stage. We have these actions of campaigns that we use to make this consciousness to society, to parents, to the young people, and we put them in action. They are free, they are in internet, and the objective is to make this consciousness. I would like to talk about two of them. One of it, it's from what Pietro was talking about. It's called My Name, My Game, and it is about. It was made in Spain. We invited 20 gamers, 20 popular gamers, to be just for one day to play with a women profile, and thus they really got a surprise when in less than 20 seconds of their first game, they were receiving all kinds of insults, sexual, gender-based, whatever you can think, they had it. So they were like, oh, I didn't know this happened. But everybody's hearing this and nobody's paying attention. So this campaign has this kind of consciousness. I really invite you to look for it in the internet. It's called My Name, My Game, and it's from Telefónica. And the second one, I am thrilled to talk about it because it's only 1 week old. It's a very, very new campaign that we made in Mexico. It's called It's Not a Game. And it is about a young gamer that has contact with some people during a game. And this goes out of the gaming mode. It goes to the real time. Because now gaming can be a very dangerous place to recruit boys and girls, teenagers, to go to criminal bands and for human trafficking. So this is what is happening in this video. We really would love for all of you to watch it. We have a land page with all this content. I will give you all the information, but it's free. You can forward it to everybody you want. And that is the objective, that many people see it, so we can really make this consciousness from the caregivers and the parents to have a very open communications with teenagers, to talk about all these risks and to try to make very responsible use of the internet, because we can't be there in every time and at every moment to stop them from the risks, but we have to make them build their own criteria to be in a safe gaming. So this is our point in Mexico, and I would really love to invite you to see them.
Let me just thank you, Anna, very much. I have written it down here. It's not a game. We'll definitely be having a look at that. Please put it in the chat for every one of us. I think, as you said, being young is difficult enough, and particularly if you are a woman and belong to some other vulnerable group. That is exactly why we take an intersectional approach to the work here at UNODC. And point well taken, gaming is good. It's supposed to be good. As you said, it develops social skills, soft skills, but it also has its risk, and we all have to be aware of them in our communities, in our families, in our homes, et cetera, et cetera. So again, that sort of whole of society approach that you're taking, I think, makes all the sense in the world. I'm a little bit mindful of time, so Anna, thanks to you, and we'll take it, return to Daida again. It may seem to be a very obvious question, the next one that I'm going to give you, but then again, it's not. At least it's not so easy to formulate or to articulate. Why do you think it's important to involve young people in what we here call policy and program formulation? I mean, the processes that we're involved with, making programs, making projects. It seems so obvious, but what's your take on it?
Thank you, Christian. I think that is a very important question. From Global Thought, as a think tank focusing on understanding the international reality and influence their transformation with social impact projects, involve young people in the policy discussion and formulation process related to the reduced crime and violence specifically is important for the following reasons. We have 3 of them and we want to share with you. The first one is, as the Women, Peace and Security Agenda of the United Nations has shown us, when main actors are listened and considered in the construction of peace and security public policies, this process are more successful than when this not occur. That's the main point of including young people in all this process related to crime and violence, and specifically talking about gender-based violence. Listen and talking to women that are facing this kind of violence in all the scenarios that could be happened is very important. The second point that we want to bring to the table is that young people are nowadays more educated and more involved in public policy problems than older generations. And that's something that governments, academia, civil society organizations has to enhance for the benefit of present and future generations of young people. So these efforts that your office is making in Mexico are very important and are a good example of what can we do in our organizations, but also governments and other actors. And finally, as the beneficiaries of the public policy in question, young people have all the inputs to understand the causes of violence that affect them directly, and even the capacity to propose solutions according to their context. And we think that this is a very important point. Gender-based violence and all the violence that are suffering young people around the world, in Latin America, in Mexico particularly, are very local in some cases, and it needs to be understood as the context. So if we saw the problems with the adultocentrism that we are used to, we are not be able to bring it to the table basic public policies that really seek to prevent crime and violence in young populations. So we think that the most important thing to understand in the inclusion of young people in this process of public policy is that they are main actors. They are not objects. They are actors that have ideas, they have solutions, and that have all the tools that we can use to really fix and have solutions to these big problems that we're facing right now in our countries. That will be my answer for your question.
And a very articulate one, I may add. Look, I think I'll take the positive from what you said. It might be, a little late, but it's certainly not too late to involve youth. And as you say, yeah, they are actors and not just standing by when it comes to these things, and we will make sure to at least to do our part, involving further going forward. It's a very, very strong mandate that we have from our female executive director in this case as well. Anna, over to you again. It's also basically the same question, but of course this time from a private sector vantage point of view. What are the opportunities for collaborations you see between students like the one we've heard of from so far, and a company like your own, Telefónica Movistar?
Well, Christian, it is essential to recognize that students and society in general have in their hands the possibility of changing the present. Knowing that the possibilities of approaching technology, for example, at thus becoming allies, we really work under a lot of alliances. With you, we have one with a lot of governmental entities, private sector, academic sector, whatever we need, and to whom we have to talk and to listen to our preventive campaigns, we make some alliances. So we think this is very important, and students are a very important part of it. They are these agents of change, these actors of change that need to be vocal about these risks and how to take advantage of technology and use it in the right way. So they can really help us warning of the digital risks that are there, not just from the theoretical side, but from the empirical mode, where they are gamers, they live it every day, and they see what is happening there, and they can be preventive. They can talk to other teenagers and say, hey, be careful with this. This is not normal. He's talking to you like another kind of thing. So they have to be conscious for another ones that are not so conscious at all. So it is also important to recognize that our society has been short-sighted. It is difficult for us to understand that prevention begins with childhood, when we establish limits, when we have time to share, when we develop self-esteem. And with a vision from Telefónica Movistar, we focus on our efforts of influencing in this kind of ages, just because parents, they are really I don't know how to say this. They are very, they have a lot of they are scared to look at this problem. So they decided not to look at it, just to take their eyes of the problem and just make it as it is not happening, because it happens in the digital world. So I'm here in my real world saying that it's not happening, and that is not true. We have to be there with our kids, with other friends when we are teenagers, talking about this and how real it can be, and how the dangers and risk that you can present, they are real too. There are a lot of people that are being harmed because of this conduct. So please try to do so and be this actor of changes for all these messages. And definitely, as I mentioned in my first intervention, with this campaign, that it's not a game, we reaffirm this commitment because we are inviting society and allies to make responsible and safe use of video games and the digital world as whole, and thus be alert against digital risks. So you can visit this campaign. I will give you all the information so you can use it and you can put it to all the people to see it. And in that land, on that page, you can find tips for gamers and very important advice and information for parents and caregivers. And this way we can provide support for minors in gaming. So we will be, and we'll continue doing this. We've been doing it since 2008, and we continue doing this and trying to talk about all these things that are not in our top of mind today.
Thank you so much, Anna. I agree. Certainly, as parents, some of these things are not easy to talk about, particularly when you don't know what the child or the young person's world really looks like, and one might catch oneself in therefore not doing anything about it. And as we all know, it's not what you do, but perhaps what you don't do that you start regretting later in life. Thank you so much for that. Pietro, you've now heard, well, not old or older people, but certainly adults speaking for a while. So just to wrap up, the idea is to give you and Anna and Daida a minute each. Maybe you first, and then Daida, and then Anna finally. Just some final thoughts on well, your presentation, the topic, and the feedback that you've heard from Daida and Anna. Please take it away, Pietro. You've got about a minute's time.
Yeah, thank you. I'll be quick then. First of all, with regards to the report we made, we provided a lot of quantitative information. Quantitative data. But I think the most insightful part of our report were the testimonies. So the qualitative part of it, which unfortunately we could not provide today. But if you ever have the opportunity to see the testimonies, I would really recommend so. And with regards to what Daida was saying, with the polarization which is visible in cyberspaces, I could not agree more. Unfortunately, any post on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter is now is very politically polarized. I'm very excited to see the campaign that Anna was telling us about. That it is not a game, and it actually has to do with what we were saying, that it can escalate from gaming platforms up to real life. And yes, I do believe that. I don't remember who it was that it said, but many people assume that because we are younger, we don't understand these problems, and I could not disagree more. So I thank you for sharing that thought. And what else did I write? Yes, and it was Daida, and thank you very much for saying it and telling that we have an input in these opinions and in this, in this project, let's call it, to prevent gender violence and to make to make solutions. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Pietro. Look, Anna and Daida, please bear with me. I'm being told that we have to give the word to Natalia because she's in a bit of a hurry because I think she has an exam today, funny enough. So with your permission, we will wait for your final thoughts till the very end and now give the word directly to Natalia Garcia, who's going to give us or share with us a youth-to-youth experience on crime prevention at the local level, Querétaro, as I believe I said before. Natalia, I'm sorry that we're making you hurry up. The floor is yours.
No problem. Thank you for the introduction. I do have an exam that's needed in order to complete my grade, so that would be the problem. So now I will be talking about crime prevention from youth to youth and the fieldwork experience that we had, both me and two other colleagues who cannot be here, Paula Cameras and Pedro Rodriguez, who did an amazing work alongside us and working with UNODC in order to do this. So we did the Line Up, Live Up program, and we were helping UNODC with this program. And basically the Line Up, Live Up program does community work with youth who can be in vulnerable situations regarding drug consumption and use, as well as with crime prevention in general. And as you can see from the picture that we have on screen, we were working with both children and youths from ages amongst like 7 to 8 and also older, almost 18 years old. So many of these people were very near to our age as well. And it was a very enlightening experience to just be able to share with these people and also do monitoring and evaluation with the programs that were already being conducted by UNODC. So if you can go to the next slide, please. What the Line Up, Live Up program does is basically empowering young people in order for them to be able to, one, create and develop critical thinking skills in order for them to be, or to get out of situations that could put their lives in danger or that could potentially be more risky to them in the future. They also create better connections with other people like family, friends. Many of the people that we were working with at the program said on multiple testimonies that we conducted as well, that they had the capacity to, for example, create more deep relationships with their friends, their family, that they were more able to respect, for example, young women and girls better, because the program was being very rich regarding the fact that they now have the capacity to actually respect other people better. And also in general, and we have a testimony on screen, but also in general, many of the children also said that they were now more communicative with their families, their friends, and therefore could express better the things they were feeling. They were better capable to understand and to express as well what was bothering them, which was, I think, for many of the children who didn't have these skills before to now have them, I think very empowering and very helpful. So we have a testimony of Fernando. We also did many more. We conducted testimonies, at least 3 or 4, in a group of like 20 people. So we did and were able to collect many of them. But this one is very enlightening, as Fernando tells us that in knowing more about drug risk, in knowing who to trust and who not to trust, and my perception was that the people I trust are not always going to want good things for me or want me to do good things. Therefore, Fernando was now able to notice how there were people who had very mean or evil intention towards him, because he was taught that these people could hurt me. And that is something that Line Up Live Up, or Juega Vive in Spanish, has helped him with, which I think is amazing, and like amazing work from UNODC. So next, please. We were able to identify particular needs and challenges. Here are some of the main ones that we did alongside UNODC at the end of the event. Firstly, many of the violence that has been still prevalent and very present, specifically in the Querétaro municipality, is that many youth people, particularly in their family and at school and the community environment, are facing constant violence, or many of the people are learning violence within these environments, which is it's very bad for their health growing up, but it is also very important to actually be able to tackle these problems in the main areas, as for people to therefore be able to actually overcome and therefore create critical thinking skills and prevention on these particular things, which is family, school, and community environment. The second very interesting thing, and also a great challenge, is gender-based violence, which is extremely prevalent still. It has become increasing to throughout time, particularly in Querétaro, even though with the Line Up Live Up program, we did see some reduction of the gender-based violence in general. However, it is extremely prevalent still, and girls are more susceptible to vulnerability in many of these instances. Gender-based violence also looks like sexual, physical, and psychological violence, as the next bullet point states, which is not only extremely present, but also extremely violent against these people, particularly the sexual and physical violence. And therefore, many, evidently, many young men are experimenting this as well. But most of the gender-based violence that is seen on these 3 areas goes against girls, who are way more vulnerable, not only in Querétaro, but in many other parts of the country. And many of these girls are experimenting this violence within their families, but also at school. And in many instances, for example, it was people who they didn't know or who were attacking them in these instances, which is also a very big challenge that is still need to be tackled. Most 9/11 calls in Querétaro were done due to sexual abuse, which is, I think, discouraging, but also something that we still need to tackle and go against. And it is heartbreaking to hear many of these calls and to work with people who are experimenting this as well. And therefore, having more data is very important, but also having young women and young people in general access to services that can address the problems that they are facing, as well as programs like Line Up Live Up that allows them to get out of extremely violent circumstances, are extremely relevant in order for them to be safer in many of these environments. Lastly, there is a lack of access to opportunities, particularly economical and educational opportunities for these people. Some of them do not have the capacity of creating deep bonds and connections, and therefore feel like they don't have a lot to lose in instances where they might be more susceptible to prevention, to crime doing, for example. And lastly, critical thinking skills and the lack of them are a root of the causes of drug consumption, dealing, and crime in general, and therefore a challenge that must be addressed in order for this to be tackled. And next slide, please. And lastly, on this slide, we see another set of bullet points of things that we identified might be better, not only on our community, but also many of the things that were done by the Line Up Live Up program that were amazing in order to actually prevent these things to happen in the first place, but also tackle the problems on the long run. Firstly, when working with intermunicipal authorities, and particularly as this program was done also in educating, for example, some institutions like schools, state protection is easier to achieve, to identify whether kids or youths or adolescents are being threatened or have something that isn't allowing them to develop fully. Therefore, state protection is easier to achieve whenever these youths are being identified, whenever we have data and whenever we have programs like Live Up being done. Second, the replication of best practices done not only by the Line Up Live Up program in other countries, but also here as well, as it has been a very successful program that has actually prevented and gotten crime down in most instances. Thirdly, intersectionality, which is very important regarding not only noticing what I explained on the previous slide, but also the fact that there are particular people who are extremely vulnerable to these circumstances, like girls and in general, people who are younger. Therefore, also creating better access to resources like data. And this is very important from an academic perspective, as this forum is all about, but also people like my age who have college education, who have the capacity to access data on the first place, create investigation reports on the problem, working with institutions like UNODC particularly, and therefore being more active into the problems that this is creating is extremely important in order for us to have more access to the things that are happening and why are they problematic in the first place. And also, this is something that we can do generally, but people who are on the particular age of like 7 to 18 years old, and into discouraging other people not only from consuming or drug dealing, but also from the prevention of committing other crimes in the first place, and doing critical thinking within us in order for people to actually be more encouraged to have healthier lifestyles in general, and also for other people to be able to have access to data and how harmful these things can be in the first place. And lastly, researching and becoming more connected to UNODC programs, not only with campaigns that are being done constantly, but also being able to access papers, for example, which are very, very enlightening and therefore extremely important in order for us to, one, be informed on the problems that we as a society are encountering, but second, in order for us to be able to create more of these campaigns, be more active on this, and also volunteer into UNODC programs and UN programs in general is extremely important from a youth perspective in order to prevent crime and violence. And that would be it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Natalia. Thank you for a wonderful presentation. I'm sorry that we had to hurry you on. Good luck with your exam. Anything else you want to say before you run off?
It has been amazing and very fulfilling to work with UNODC. I hope everyone has the opportunity to either volunteer or be part of the programs that you are conducting. It has been eye-opening and enlightening, and that would be it. Thank you.
That is very kind of you. We'll take that with us as inspiration and motivation. And thank you for homing in on prevention at the local level, which is so important. Obviously, a municipality like Querétaro is so much closer to our constituents. We very much indeed want to work not just at the federal level, not just at the state level, but very much at the municipal level, at the community level. Thank you so much, and thank you everybody for your flexibility here. Just before we go on to some questions again from private sector and civil society perspectives, let me just circle back to our two panelists, Anna and Natalia. First, could I just ask you to write what do you call that? To wrap up your final thoughts on the first session we had on gaming and the gender perspective. Would that be possible? Daida, would you go first?
Perfect. Thank you so much, Christian, and it was very interesting to hear Natalia as well. My final thoughts on this subject of gender-based violence in the cyberspace related to video games is that governments, civil society organizations, academia now are facing the challenge to understand these new ways, or these ways how young people are interacting and how to prevent any type of violence. And this is also related with the content that the video games has and how the young people are enjoying their time or their free time doing whatever they want. But if they are enjoying to do something that is violent, even in the space of the video, or in the space of video games, we have to understand why is this happening. We have to understand the causes of why young people are enjoying connect through violence in these scenarios. And also we have the challenge to include young people into the understanding of the problem, but also into bringing solutions that are flexible and acceptable for their communities and the specific ways that they are facing this type of violence. So once again, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here with you. And we hope that in this interaction between young people, academia, civil society, and other organizations, we can build a better world. Thank you so much.
Aida, thank you so much. This world of ours is a small one these days, so there will be plenty of opportunity to get together again on other projects, and I look forward to that. You have an open invitation to our offices as a very first step. Anna, we'll just give you a couple of minutes as well to wrap up your final thoughts, this case from the private sector side. Again, we're very grateful that Telefónica Movistar is with us, that you're with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Christian. Well, I just want to say first that it's very refreshing to listen to Pietro and Natalia, not youngsters, talking about this and studying and making some analysis of all this problem, because it is a big problem, and it can't be just take it from the parent side or the authority side. Students and the teenagers as well has to be involved in what is happening to them. The second thought that I want to share with you is that we have to, is real life. Whatever we say or do, or how we conduct ourselves in virtual space, is really having a very profound, those kind of things in gaming and other spaces where we really are not doing so because of the anonymous that is in there, and it is very strong for people to say or to do things that are not done in the real world. So we have to be really careful with that, and I really love to being in this space with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anna, so much. Again, I think it's all important that we get all the perspectives, including in this case from a company like yours and an industry leader at that, with all the capacity that you have to lean on your, in the good sense, lean on your cadena de valor, your supply chain, so to speak. That is something, of course, we're looking for, because that allows us to leverage the good work that we're all trying to do together. Thank you so much to both of you. And with your permission, now we will get back on track. And I remind you that we are here with Sarai from Juvenile Justice Advocates International, champions of all things youth, and also Cecilia from Uber, who we've had the opportunity to work on the Blue Heart campaign, Corazón Azul, which some of you may have seen in the metro or on a plane or elsewhere. So Sarai, are you with us? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Look, I'm basically going to give you the same sort of question. You know, from your unique perspective as Juvenile Justice Advocates International, what do you consider to be the main challenges that young people, youngsters, teenagers they face when we talk about crime and violence in Mexico and also in the region and beyond.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to thank ECOSOC and UNODC representatives for the invitation to this important forum. First, I'd like to address what I consider to be the first challenge all children and youth face regarding crime and violence that impacts them during their development years and then further on as adults. There are a number of violent actions that are largely normalized in our society. Violence within family units, the public space, schools, work environment, among others. To give some examples, we need to address better how do we define, identify, and report violent actions when it comes to sexual assault and abuse, drug risks, gender violence in social contexts, particularly in schools. Also, how is abuse of power defined in all social venues? And lastly, the effects of racial and gender disparities in policymaking. We often make a distinction between the victims and victimizers of violence. However, most children who are offenders have been victims too. Both victims and offenders have similar social, economic, ethnic, and community challenges. A more precise example is that we found several incarcerated children that were victims of sexual assault prior to their incarceration and are currently victims of abuse of power in the system, and yet are not aware that these actions are violent and keep them from successfully reintegrated into society. Now, I want to focus on the policymaking that is intended to address prevention of violence in children and youth. Prevention of violence and crime among this group is more often not a priority among local governments in the region. While other issues under the children's rights agenda are important, I see a tendency of government, non-government organizations, and international foundations programs of moving away from such an urgent topic. I had the opportunity to attend a major conference with the presence of regional foundations and nonprofits in Central America last year, and found myself alarmed that children and youth at risk were not part of the agenda for the next couple of years. I strongly believe that if we don't prioritize children and youth in national and in our own national strategies, we cannot advance as a country. Number two, when governments and foundations do find an interest on addressing this issue, children and youth initiatives are typically placed under national security agendas that are designed for either adults or women, rather than designing strategies under the scope of the protection, guarantee, and restitution of children's rights. This is a conversation among the international community in which we have identified the urgency for international initiatives to undertake the paradigm and specialized guidelines of the Convention of Rights of the Child. Addressing the prevention of violence and crime solely under the scope of security concerns make interventions carry punitive responses rather than a human rights approach. And number three, governments at large have decreased national budgets directed to address prevention of crime and violence against children. This makes it harder for local experts to implement initiatives at all levels of intervention, and adjacently, it is even harder for children to voice their needs and participate in policymaking. We have also witnessed several successful intervention programs, especially on prevention of crime, come to an end for this reason, and they leave children and youth unprotected and lacking opportunities to improve their safety. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let me just wait till they get the camera back on. Thank you so much. I think you touch on so many important points. I mean, it goes without saying, but unless you take an integrated and comprehensive approach, you're not going to get anywhere, and it's not enough. Not enough looking at women. You also have to look at, in this case, young women or youth. And of course, the funding is so critical. And funding the critical mass, I would add, is so critical. When we look at the cost of crime, when we look at the cost of corruption, and then compare that to what is invested in crime prevention, the numbers don't always look so good. Thank you so much for that for the time being. Cecilia, are you with us? Over to you again. From your vantage point, from Uber's vantage point, what do you consider the challenge to be when it comes to young people and the ones that come in contact with your company?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, and really wonderful experience hearing from everyone, and particularly from the two students. And I think I would pose that one of the biggest challenges is actually, not the big questions and sacrifices that sometimes an environment of crime and violence pushes them to. And I think we've seen this with the presentations that were just made, just having to choose between sometimes achieving a certain independence that is so important for young people, but also achieving the growth and developing their skills, as you were talking about during, for example, the gaming environment, but also in other contexts, the problems that Natalia described for very young people, even children, that are sometimes they are facing them within their own homes. Certainly, these are hindering their development, their opportunities for entertainment, for socialization, for just growing their skills and their talents and their passions. And I think that's the most sort of heartbreaking challenge that young people face. And it's one that, as the cliche goes, certainly also brings an opportunity within itself. And one thing that I think companies such as Uber, tech companies have constantly looked into is the opportunity sort of to bridge those gaps and to find a way through technology for us to sort of reimagine how those questions are being developed. And so that's one of the things that I certainly see. I think the other challenge is just not losing the thing that we've seen today, this desire and this capacity for curiosity and for actually challenging the status quo and looking into things and not going with this inertia of saying, this is how things have always been done, or this is something, as has already been mentioned before, I think Anna mentioned this inertia of saying, not thinking about something or trying to avoid a topic instead of facing it on. And so I think that's the biggest challenge for young people, to hold on to this energy that they brought today to this presentation from the teams that worked on this, and to really continue to develop it. I would only add that one of the things that we found at Uber is just how can we, through technology, as I said, bridge these gaps. We recently, you, Christian, mentioned how we coming into contact with young people through our platform. Young people are, of course, our users. Sometimes they also use the platform as driver partners, as delivery partners, and we constantly listen to what they say. One of the things that we've studied recently is a solution to really be able to bring families the possibility of solving this challenge of transportation for young people under 18 years old, and really making sure that they reach all of the opportunities that they want to reach while being, in a safe environment and while having the technology and the supervision that they need. And we've done this through a Teens product. So this is something that we are also working with through the technology, but also through listening to these young users, to just even young families, and just incorporating also young people into the company. So it's been really exciting to listen right now to these projects, and I'll save some more ideas for the second intervention for the sake of time.
Thank you so much, Cecilia. I think you touched on a range of important points, one of which, of course, is not being afraid of speaking up, not being afraid of questioning the status quo. And I think this is particularly relevant in a country like Mexico right now, where there's going to be a change of government, where everybody's looking for new ideas. And I think it's everybody's responsibility to come up with that. And of course, that should include the use of technologies, AI. We try to use it in our work, for instance, to detect violence against women on emergency calls, for instance, just as one very simple example of that. But thank you so much, and yes, we will come back to you just in a second. Sarai, over to you again. Having listened to Natalia and having listened to the discussion so far, why do you think it's so important to involve youth in policy discussions, in the formulation of projects, and of course, not just the formulation and the design, but also the implementation and onto indeed monitoring and evaluation of this. What are your thoughts on that? Please go ahead.
The root causes of crime and violence against children are multifactorial. The expertise of public and private actors is important for the development of effective interventions, but children's voice add a profound insight. The Convention of the Rights of the Child is very clear in Article 12 that children should be able to voice their views in matters that affect them. There's no strict definition of child participation nor one set formula. New generations are challenging decision makers on the diversity of the use of their voice. There have been efforts in multiple initiatives to comply with Article 12 of the Convention. Oftentimes it means having youth present at policy discussions, but fewer times has it meant to have children and youth sit in decision-making venues. I believe the importance of bringing children and youth in policy discussion and decision-making exercises relies on some key aspects. First one being, children and youth can bring true representation among their age ranges, ethnicity, nationality, gender, migration status, etc. Two, children and youth who participate in policymaking gain a sense of appropriation. We have learned that when youth know their views are important, they tend to be more open about the details of the matters that impact them and can even impact how resources are used on intervention programs. And three, impacted youth-led initiatives have an opportunity to bring change among their peers as it empowers their agency. I'll share a testimony on the matter. There's this young woman named Alexandra who we supported for several years in the state of Chihuahua. She had been in the justice system prior to the implementation of her projects. While in prison, she had little to no programming activities. They would do their nails and hang out. Sometimes they were even lucky to have craft workshops. When her time came to be benefited with an early release, the judge denied it. And she says that she was not ready anyway to be outside of prison and that she wished she had been provided with therapy and skills to be able to reintegrate herself into society. Now, Chihuahua, like many states in Mexico, have local justice and reintegration commissions, a place where decision makers sit and address matters on the juvenile justice system locally. Now, no commission in the country include impacted youth in those meetings. Once we started supporting Alexandra, she was granted a place at that table and was able to voice the realities of life in detention facilities. Oftentimes, these interventions were uncountable and necessary and helped state actors be aware of underlying issues that needed to be addressed. For example, having more diverse and specialized programming for girl teenagers. One last urgent action that is highly important is the creation of youth councils with members from vulnerable communities that can advocate for policy change. Currently, there are few venues for youth to make use of their voice in this way, and maybe this is a catalyzer for such conversations, and I remain hopeful that more resources become available for this purpose. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for raising the importance of this case testimony, but also when that translates into success stories, it's so important getting the message out there, something that we at the UN could do more of and certainly do better of. Yeah, we have people like you and of course also the private sector to help us with that. Cecilia, we are sort of getting towards the end here, but I want to have the same question for you. What are the opportunities that you see for working with youth as a private sector company, a company like Uber? What are the opportunities that you see, and how's that coming along for you?
Right. Thank you. Well, I think I'll mention two ways to answer this question. The first one is, Christian, you yourself mentioned at the beginning of this that for, I think, over 7 years now, we've been proud to partner with the UNODC on the Blue Heart campaign, Corazón Azul, to raise awareness and fight human trafficking. And that's actually been also through our partnership with a local organization in Mexico, an NGO called Sin Trata. And that's an organization that, interestingly enough, I think was originated in a university context. So Mariana Ruenes, when she founded this, she was a student, and through her, interest in facing and tackling a very big social issue, much like today Pietro and Natalia have shared with us, she developed this organization. She really was one that helped Uber really find a specific situation in which we could be of service to this bigger cause. And that was, realizing that drivers in every city are basically, as Mariana says, a pair of eyes everywhere, and they are able to really identify sometimes situations. But if, and this is a very important if they have the key information, right? If they have information that allows them to connect what they are seeing and what feels maybe suspicious or weird, and really identify an opportunity to make a report, and also make a report that is safe, that is anonymous, and that is not risking them, and make it through the authorities. So I would just, this example helps me illustrate just the value of young people getting involved, really coming up with an interesting way to fight an issue, and then connecting several pieces of the puzzle, right? So for us, that was a private company through UNODC and their larger campaign, but also with the local government and the possibility of really receiving these reports from drivers. And that's something that we've been doing, as I mentioned, for over 7 years. That's been very helpful. And like that example, we have other partnerships with organizations that come from very young people. So this interest, this passion is very important, and is not only about doing a sort of philanthropic interest, but it's a key to the business itself, because we are working not only in the technological world or digital world, but in the real world, in real cities and movement. And we want cities to keep moving, and for that we need all of these partners and organizations and institutions that are helping to fight these key issues. And then I'll just make a quick plug because the question just gives me a great opportunity for it. We have a wonderful internship program called University, and I hear that we are just about to open the sort of the new wave for it. We'll release the dates, but it's for joining on June to Uber offices in Mexico and in Chile. So I invite anybody interested to just look for t.uber.com/universitylatam or LATAM, and you can find more information there.
Thank you so much. And there's no point in a little bit of no harm in a little bit of self-promotion. That's fine. Actually, you took the words straight out of my mouth, in the sense that, of course, things that you get involved with have to be key, have to be relevant to your core business. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense for you to be involved. So I corporate social responsibility, I think, has to be looked from that point of view. It's not just anything you can get involved with, but things that make sense from your core business. So thank you very much for that. We are now very much getting towards the end. We'll do some final thoughts. Unfortunately, Natalia could not be with her. She was going to speak first, and then I'll give the word to Sarai and Cecilia. I will not pretend to speak on behalf of anybody, and certainly not on behalf of Natalia. But I must say, it does give us encouragement to see that she and her fellow students, they thought that the program that she referred to, Line Up, Live Up, was a relevant program, and that one that spoke to the audience in question, in this case, young peoples. We will certainly take that as one of the takeaways from here. Sarai and Cecilia, I'll give you each, Sarai, you first, a minute just to wrap up some final thoughts, and then I'll just wrap the whole session up with your permission.
Right. I'd like to just mention 2 more things. I feel like I'm yet to see someone do a study on adult offenders to identify how many of them were in contact with the law in their youth years. And I mean this because I truly believe that prevention starts at early stages and at large in all contexts of society. And second, I did not mention this, but I also find that another huge challenge that at least youth in contact with the law face is the social stigma. And not only them, I also remember my time working with trafficking survivors and how much of a struggle it was for them to be believed by the system at large, even being victims of a horrid crime. So I would encourage this kind of initiatives to also think about bringing in front of society tools to fight the stigma that sometimes children and youth carry with them.
Okay, thank you very much. And Cecilia, it's very much over to you, almost for famous last words.
Well, for famous last words, I would certainly say, as we constantly mention at Uber, as safety never stops, and we know that our job will never be done in terms of safety, and just considering every point that safety entails in terms of the interaction with our platform. We know also that fighting the issues that have been raised today, the crime and violence in our region, certainly, it's probably not going to be over anytime soon. It's not something that one single idea is going to solve. And I think there's actually, it might sound pessimistic, but I think there's actually a positive side to this, because it's a continuous process, right? That's why we need young people involvement. That's why we need institutions, and that's why we need the collaboration, cross-sector collaboration, as we've seen today, because this is an ongoing task. And that's certainly what we've seen within Uber, and we benefit from having a very young sort of employee base, most of them under 35, which pains me to say as somebody that is over 35, but we benefit from their ideas. One quick example that was shared today, we do use AI we have for many years, for example, to detect possible instances of violation of our terms and conditions, so discrimination, these types of attitudes, even in text messages that are sent through the Uber app or the Uber Eats app, right? So there are many examples that come just from a creative outlook towards problems, and as our mission states, towards trying to reimagine the way things are today. And so certainly count on Uber in Mexico and in Latin America, just to continue being a partner, and especially a partner for young people involved with the biggest issues that we have today. And as a final shout out, I'm a proud graduate from the Campus Querétaro, from the Tec de Monterrey. So it was very exciting to us to listening to these wonderful students, and thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Cecilia. Thank you very much to all of our participants. Look, we have 5 minutes left, and as I promised, and we don't always get to this, so I'm very happy that we do. We actually have a very pertinent question from the audience, which I'll read just in a minute. But I also see that there is a post from a nonprofit NGO in Tapachula, Chiapas, named Chumimi, who work with refugees and indigenous women, and they're asking us how they can get to work with the likes of us, whether it be the UN, NGOs with expertise in this field, or private companies. And I promise you, Chimumi, that we will get back to you as we go offline. I promise you that. So please bear with us in that regard. Thank you for being with us. I have a question which I'll just sort of throw out there, and then anybody who feels that they're in a position to answer, feel free. It's a little bit loaded, but I think we can do that. The question goes as follows: regarding the policies aimed at combating online gender violence, or maybe just also violence in general, do you anticipate a shift towards preventive measures in future frameworks? And there is mention to the Ley Olimpia case. Numerous NGOs have expressed concerns about the punitive nature of legislation, and it appears that in Mexico we rely primarily on criminal law mechanism, neglecting alternative policy approaches. I hope you get the question. It's about, will we see more prevention measures, more alternative to incarceration as such, or do you see sort of the more punitive line going forward in the future? Anybody dare to respond? Sari, perfect. Thank you for helping me out here.
No, it's my pleasure. We tend to forget that sometimes policy, it's not only about legal framework. That it could be a starting point. It's not usually where it stops, or it's not the whole formula. And I feel that Olimpia Law was a great initiative, an advancement in the feminist movement in Mexico, but it lacked this whole other policies around prevention, and how is the Olimpia Law received among genders. And I believe that the more the nonprofit sector and the private sector push for whole and policies, then we can see legal frameworks alongside investment in prevention, walking alongside. Not that this is a goal that JJI can take on, but this happens. It translates even to the criminal justice system, where we can see legal framework advancements and reforms, but they're also lacking policy making around prevention, and then prevention of, and then aid to victims and all around it. So do I see a change in that? It really depends on how well is our nonprofits and other government organizations organized. And my hope is that, yes, so we do see more efforts in bringing policies from all front sides.
Thank you much, Sarai. Look, Cecilia, it seems like you are intent on getting the final word, and indeed you will just before I wrap up. Please, go ahead.
Just thank you. Just quickly mentioning that we have a partnership with the Garapé Institute that develops studies on this, and they recently published this analysis on Mexican and public policy, specifically looking at this question of sort of prevention versus reaction to the issue, in that case, of gender-based violence. So just mentioning that they have this very interesting look into evaluation of existing public policies, and certainly one of the conclusions was that there needs to be sort of more of attention into other types of policies and not only sort of the reactive or the temporary policies. Just mentioning that quickly. Thank you.
Thank you again. Thank you to everybody. We are just about to wrap up. Another 60 seconds, I promise, no more. Look, at the UN, they sometimes accuse us of doing a lot of talking and not so much doing. I think today we didn't do so much talking, and I'm very happy that we let Pietro and Natalia do most of the talking with their wonderful presentations. The very hard work that they represented on behalf of themselves and, of course, their fellow students. Just to finish off, you know that in UNODC, we are here to invest in security. We're here to invest in development. We very much see ourselves as a development agency, as many of our fellow agencies in the UN, because crime, violence, corruption undermines everything that we stand for. It obviously undermines development itself. So we try to invest in people, we try to invest in communities, we try to invest in institutions, and we do that on the basis, as we said earlier, on good data. We do it focused on people, we do it focused on rights, focused on root courses, and of course now very much so with a focus on youth. And I think some of the best weapons we have in our toolbox is exactly crime prevention. And I'm happy to say that in our international framework, prevention takes center stage much more now than it did in the past. You will see it mentioned in the convention's articles dedicated to this. And also you will see citizen participation, which I believe is another great tool mentioned directly in our legal framework. I think that's a great progress, great advancements we've seen over the years. So with that said, and I think just about on time, I would like to thank everybody for their patience. There was a few improvisations that we had to do. Thank you to everybody for their great participation, fantastic interventions. And if there's any more follow-up to do in the chat line, we will certainly do that once we finish. Maybe everybody can put out their camera one last time just for a family photo. And then very good evening to you all. Buenas noches. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And also thank you to the entire UNODC team for being very patient with me. Thank you.